Well, that was ugly. The music wasn't ugly, but the Browns' performance today up in Detroit was putrid, especially by the offense, who hasn't figured out how to score more than 20 points in the last 10 straight games going back to last year and 9 straight. Absolutely horrendous again. Welcome to the Fanatical Elves post game show. I'm your host, John Sujan, and I'm running solo. We might have a few folks come on, but for right now, this is going to be a short episode because yes, you're already experienced the loss this afternoon, and we really don't want to talk about it much. But there are some things to discuss moving forward as now the Browns will prepare to go over to Europe, to London. Next week, they will be playing the Minnesota Vikings, who lost today to the Pittsburgh Squealers. And then we get to come back to the States and play the Pittsburgh Squealers the week after. Oh boy. Well, I hope that last week, when the Browns magically beat the Green Bay Packers in the last 3 minutes of the game, will keep you all, well, it kept your spirits up until today. And then they all came crashing down as our Brownies just, ugh. So I was out and about today, not here in my hometown of Columbus, but we were traveling, doing some different things with our family, kids, which is, I would always suggest that if you ever have the opportunity to do either the Browns game or do anything else, especially if it's outside, especially if it's here in Ohio where it's like 90 degrees and sunny all the time. We haven't had a lick of rain in ages. I would always suggest doing that. Get out, do things that are fun with your families and friends because this conversation and what we're going to talk about right here is ugly, ugly. Yes, indeed. Um, saw part of the first half of the game. Browns look good. They look good. They had a solid first drive there, scored a touchdown, took the lead. They don't we haven't seen that all season. But of course, the great defense that we're always talking about. And see, this is where I know a lot of you won't want to talk about it. You will want to talk about how the defense is solid and they just, after so many attempts by the offense being stuck in the mud, this is really on the offensive side of things. But they were they were ahead. They had the lead 7-0. What could the defense do right there? They had just stopped them on the opening drive. Could they have stopped them on that next series? Sure, they could have. Did they? No, they did not. The Lions rushed down the field, scored an easy touchdown. So while I love, everybody loves the defense, and look, I can love this defense, but the inconsistencies and what that happened at the beginning of that game didn't help matters. So it's 7-7. Didn't watch much of the next parts because the next parts included interceptions by Joe Flacco. Did catch the one where he threw it to nobody except for a Detroit line who was wide open. My phone is blowing up here, so we're going to see what the heck is going on here. I've got like 10, let's see here. All sorts of things. So we're getting all sorts of, there's information coming out about I think the Guardians were, I think the Lions or the Tigers just lost. So I think that wraps up the division. So congratulations to the Guardians. Even if they lose today, I think they were down by a run. But any of you guys who are watching right now in the Fanatical Elves group, if you want to join me on the post game show, feel free. All right. So Joe Flacco. Let's pause for a quick commercial break before I get into talking about Joe Flacco. This is the Fanatical Elves post game show. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks for coming back to us on the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. We love having you on board. We know that the Browns suck right now. So if you're listening or watching, we appreciate that. Please download us on Apple and Spotify. And a good shout out to Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. They shake the hand of the farmer. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is looking very much his age. And the first drive was great. Our wide receivers actually caught some passes too. So good job on that on that part. But the rest of the game was awful. The interception that Flacco threw, to nobody. Tillman, I guess, went the wrong way. He blamed himself for that. Was god awful. Then they scored a touchdown off of that. Then later on, I didn't catch the other interception. I guess he was climbing the back of Jerry Jeudy, one of the defenders. He intercepted it. That they didn't reverse anything. They gave the ball to the Lions. The Lions scored again. At the break, it was 20-7 at halftime. The Browns did move the ball a little bit, settled for a field goal, which I know several of my colleagues said, field goals aren't going to win it. And obviously, you as a Browns fan know that this Browns offense has got to generate points, and they just can't. They scored 10 points again in this game, and it was just awful. They tried to drive again. They tried a 56-yard field goal by Andre Schmitz, but he missed it just a little bit wide to the left. But it's still 20-10 going into the fourth quarter. And the Browns defense played pretty solid. However, they didn't register a sack today. So shout out to the Lions and to their quarterback who, again, did the things that he needed to do. Jared Goff got the ball out in time. There were a couple plays that looked like Myles Garrett was going to get him, and Goff is a good quarterback. Did some good things, and he's a better quarterback than Jordan Love. Just hands down. Me watching that game last week when the Browns beat Green Bay, Jared Goff is just a better quarterback. So you may disagree, you may like Jordan Love, but that's part of the reason why the Browns were able to beat the Green Bay Packers and why the Packers aren't going to be as good as the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have a lot of weapons. Didn't help that our Browns defense can't tackle either, especially when it comes to special teams. So it's 20-10. And what does our special teams do every week? Bubba Ventrone, great coach. Not he. The kick is punted. The punt is a terrible punt by our Borquez, who shanked it or whatever. Well, anyway, the guy catches it like at nearly midfield, sprints by everybody on the Browns special teams for a touchdown. So there you go. It went from 20-10 to 27-10, and the rest is history. And to be honest, there were still 10, 11 minutes to go. And I agree with the observations by the folks that were doing the commentating, the TV announcers, looking like the Browns were not in any kind of rush offensively. Their body language was just negative. I mean, that's coaching, folks. That's players and coaches. And if Stefanski is not up there telling these guys to, they're down 27-10. The game was not out of reach. It was, but it certainly felt that way when the Browns were taking 40 seconds to snap the ball. Just terrible. There was no energy. Jerry Jeudy, Tillman's hurt again. Jerry Jeudy just looks beside himself. He can't catch squat. There was that series where Fannin, and I'll give Fannin a pass because he's a rookie, but those two passes that Joe Flacco threw in that late in that third quarter or fourth quarter were right on the money. Harold Fannin has to catch that. I'll give him a pass. It was an awkward sort of look, and maybe he lost it. It went right through him. He typically won't miss those. Jerry Jeudy, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, he's a basket case, folks. Jerry Jeudy, he was a basket case in Denver. People don't want to talk about that experience he had in Denver. People in Denver were so happy to get rid of Jerry Jeudy. Now we have him. Yeah, he had one pretty good, solid season last year, but it's gone into the toilet this year, and it's not recovering. This team is 1-3 right now. The only player on offense that gives a damn, and you know this as well as I do, it's Quinshon Judkins. That kid, you could see it out there. He's pissed off because his offensive linemen aren't blocking correctly, and the players around him could give a crap, but he does. We need more players like that, and unfortunately, that stems too from coaching. This team is 1-3. They're going across the pond to go play the Vikings. If you think the Browns are going to beat Minnesota, I had a little hope that maybe, and especially at the beginning of that game, that maybe the Browns were ready to turn things around. They're not. And unless they make some sort of drastic change at quarterback and do some other things with their team, There's no way that they're going to go to Minnesota to England and beat the Vikings. The Vikings have already over there. Granted, they lost to the Squealers, but I would be shocked if they beat Minnesota. Now, listen, I know the Lions are better than Minnesota, so I'll give them like a 1.5 chance, 1.5 percentage chance of beating the Vikings. 98.5% chance they don't beat the Vikings. Right now, that's what it looks like. And then they got to come back and play Pittsburgh, who everybody has said, well, they don't look very good. Well, they just beat the Vikings in Dublin. So it's a game at a time. And we've talked about this, this team could be 0-6. Well, they're not. They're 1-3. We've talked about them being 2-4, maybe coming out of this. If they could get one win and lose one of those two follow-up games, okay, you're 2-4. But you still have so many issues. People asked Stefanski today in the post-game show, what's he, is he concerned about making a switch to Joe Flacco or from Joe Flacco to Dylan Gabriel? He's like, that's not our focus. Coach, what is your focus? And so many coaches, and I understand this, I'm a coach too. You want to go back and you want to watch the film, you want to see kind of what's happening. But for God's sakes, man, you've been around this team for 6 years. You've been around this team for 6 weeks or 4 weeks. You should know your team by now. You should know your team by now. So it is what it is. Let's look at some stats real quick before we take off and say goodbye. But I wrote a couple of these. Let me take a look here. So one of the things I noted, just to give a shout out to Quinshon Judkins, he finished with 21 carries, 82 yards, 3.9 a carry, not bad. Long, he had a long 11-yard run. Was his long, and he had one touchdown there at the beginning of the game. Good job to Quinshon Judkins, who gives a shit. Joe Flacco, horrendous, 16 for 34, 184 yards. Yards per passing attempt, 5.4. 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 39.3. Joe, I think you need to pack it up, go back to your couch, and start watching football on Sundays around the comfort of your kids who love you to death, I'm sure. Because I know you're a good guy, but you just don't have it anymore. The Browns didn't have any sacks, by the way. No sacks registered. And even though everyone says that, Myles Garrett can tear it up and burning it up on AstroTurf, it doesn't matter. They didn't sack him at all. Now, overall for the game, the Browns had, let's see here. They ended up with 249 yards of offense. The Lions had 277 yards of offense. Penalties were even. Turnovers, we had 3. They had 1. Third down efficiency, we don't need to worry about that. Overall, we had 79 yards rushing. Like I said, Quinshon had 81. I think there was a sack in there too. Rushing, they had 109 yards. So they did rush the ball relatively well against us. We did control the time of possession a little bit. We were even in first downs. And when we look at these stats, a lot of times these stats are looking like they're either they're even, or in the last couple of games we've actually have had the advantage. But stats don't speak to what's going on. The Lions scored 24 of their 34 points by way of interceptions, turnovers, and a kick return or a punt return. That means that the Browns defense legitimately gave up like 10 points. So I get it. And listen, we're hanging our hat. Everything we're concentrating on is on our defense. But again, I go back to the very beginning of the game. You're up 7-0. I know people don't want to talk about this, and maybe you think it's ridiculous to go back to it, but I don't, because you're up 7-0. If this Browns defense really wants to step up and be what they really want to be, then they put their foot on the ground, they attack the Lions, and they shut them down in that next possession. But they didn't. They allowed them to score a touchdown. And somebody just say, "Well, so and so got held." Who cares? They're going to miss holding calls. They missed the holding call. There's a holding call on every freaking. There's a holding on every freaking play. You know that. You watch enough NFL. So it is what it is. The Browns go down to defeat this afternoon, 34-10. And it's not looking very positive after such a huge high last week. I mean, I was still trying to come down from that high. That experience and going up to Cleveland was fantastic. I'm going to talk about it on my upcoming Johnny Cleveland podcast, which I may be coming out later tonight after I cool down from this latest defeat. They're 1-3. The Browns have won a game, but certainly we thought things would be potentially a little bit different. But in the end, it looks horrendous. 34-10. No one's going to go back and say, oh, well, the Lions scored 24 points on Browns turnovers. We might know that for a week or two, or those of us who analyze the game. But the general population who just casually watches the Browns are going to be like, oh, well, the Browns are being the Browns again, and they got beat 34-10. So that's the opinion that is that's been out there, and it's going to continue to be out there. And this doesn't do anything for the good of the organization. You have these conversations with these players, and or I have these conversations with fans about Stefanski and Andrew Berry, and the high that I saw them experience, the camaraderie when last week when they're storming off the field and Stefanski and Berry are doing pump fists and high fives and all this stuff in the tunnel of the Brown Stadium. You could sense, you could feel the energy, but I could also see a guy in Stefanski who knows, and I know some of you, a lot of you want to get rid of Stefanski. And look, if they can't win and they're putrid and they're 2 wins and 12 losses at the end of the season, they're going that way to maybe win 2 or 3 games. That's the thing. It's like, I know some of my colleagues talked about, well, the Browns defense is solid to where some of us have been saying, well, we're only going to win 3 or 4 games. And my colleague is saying, well, with the Browns defense, there's no way that they're going to win more than that. And he's probably right. But after a game like this, it's like, okay, where are we going to get the wins again? Because we can't generate any offense. And so then you see this coach in Stefanski who is just so emotionally tied to this team. The emotion he shared after the win last week against Green Bay looked like a guy who was just yearning to get a win because there's been so much pressure on him. And I know some of us think that he's safe. There's no way in God's green earth that this guy is safe, and Andrew Berry, if they continue to lose putrid games like this 34-10. And despite the Browns having this solid defense, it's going to become more apparent because this defense isn't going to give a shit. They're really not. They're going to go out there because why give all their efforts? I mean, some of the guys, they want to go to a better team, maybe win a championship or something at another team. But why should most of these guys give a crap if this team is 2 wins and 12 losses at some point? I don't know what they're going to do with Joe Flacco. I can see the advantages, the disadvantages to having him out there right now. He certainly isn't generating any kind of enthusiasm, but I put that back on the coaches as much as all the players that are out there 10 minutes in a game in a fourth quarter and they're walking to the line not looking like they care about a game. That's just a damn shame. And that's really just a universal problem for the entire organization. And that defense is going to see that. They're going to hear that this week. So we'll see how they participate next week when they go out to play the Minnesota Vikings in London. All right, folks, that's all I got tonight. I hope you guys all have a very good rest of your day. Go Browns. Keep your heads up. It's a Monday, not a victory Monday, but hey, we got the Guardians, who I think just wrapped up the division. Take care, everybody.